Yo, what is going on, friends? Welcome to the SitRep for today, the 27th of December, the day after Boxing Day, 2022. Only a couple of days left in this year, so enjoy while you got them. Use this time to reflect back on the year that you've had, 2022, and prepare yourself for 2023 because it's coming whether you like it or not. Hopefully you should like it because you're a preparedness-minded person. So that's what this is all about, where we go through the news stories that I've seen in the last couple of days and we have a look at them from the perspective of how we keep ourselves more prepared, because the goal of this channel, and I had a reminder of this overnight, the goal of this channel is to inspire, maybe inform people. If you didn't know certain things, it might be educational in nature. But certainly, just that kind of like reminder that there's other people out there who are thinking about this sort of stuff as well. And being preparedness minded, I should say, is not a weird or strange thing. It's actually a very normal human thing to do. It's abnormal in the context of our modern society, but I view our modern society as abnormal in the context of human evolution. So something that is abnormal in an abnormal situation should therefore be normal. That's the logic that goes in my head anyway. Had a bit of a reminder on that. Just another one of those YouTube comments on some of the other my older videos where it's like, oh, you're not doing this piece of gear's crap, or you're not, blah, blah, blah. You don't really do this, you don't really do that. And I'm just like, man, look, I don't need to show you absolutely everything that I do. I'm not here to swing my dick around and prove to you who I am. I am here to try and inspire people to do more preparedness-minded things. That's it. So yeah, that's the goal of the channel. And right now, many of us may or may not be hanging around family, but the likelihood that you were hanging around family during Christmas sort of era time is heightened. So if you are hanging around family, it might be a good opportunity to start to bring your family in. And that's certainly something that has been kind of discussed, not full on discussed, but it came up in conversation with the family. How, look, food, things like that might start getting harder to get. So how about we all start growing food, and plans are roughly taking shape. I'm not turning the family into a prepper family or anything. I mean, my close-knit family is definitely, but the extended family, I'm not trying to convert anyone to my way of thinking. I'm just, people have switched onto this from the last 3 years of being punished by our governments. And so, people are a bit more open to it. We go, hey, have you thought about growing a garden? A bit of food in your garden, and then we can swap. You grow this, I'll grow that, and such and such has a farm, and maybe they're going to raise sheep, and we can knock over some of those sheep and have some meat that we can eat there. Blah blah blah. Anyway, it's a good time to do it. I think now's a good time to approach this sort of stuff. Good morning to Alpha Omega Survival Supply on YouTube. Thank you very much for joining me, and for the muscle arm emoji. Appreciate it. Welcome. Take the ride. Hey, take the ride. What's going on? You haven't been on one of the lives in ages. Welcome back. You have been commenting though. I've been reading your comments, so thank you very much. Says, what people call prepping today, Grandma just called it in the average days of the week. Just normal average day. That's what prepping is nowadays. It's just people getting by in times gone by, in maybe 2-3 generations before us, and continue on all the way through human existence. You got that right, lol. Thankfully, I was raised by my grandparents, says Alpha Omega Survival Supply. Absolutely. I wasn't raised by my grandparents, but my dad was old. He was an old man when he had me, or older man, born in 1937. So there you go. And he used to tell me stories about growing up in a very poor family of 11 children. Good times. Good times. Peter Rouse has just finished in the garden, expanding. Excellent. Good to hear. I need to wrap this up today and go and water my plants because it is hot where I am right now and my plants are getting punished. Anyway, I hope you're all good. I hope you had a great, fantastic Christmas and Boxing Day, and you stuffed your face full of food and do all the things that we do around Christmas time, and had a good, jolly time. And wasn't too stressful or painful for those who find hanging with family stressful or painful. I certainly don't. I love family. All right, let's jump into it. Let's give you a bit of perspective. If you were, bickering about things with your family for some reason, then let's get some perspective on the world and see, hey, you know what? Family's actually all right, because we've got bigger things going on in the world. And the two biggest things that jumped out at me this morning when I was going through some stories, South Korea and Taiwan airspace has been interdicted. Not a big deal, not a big deal, it's a big deal, but it's not out of the ordinary for this to happen in Taiwan. It is happening very regularly in Taiwan. And one of the theories of why it's happening so regularly in Taiwan is China is actually buzzing the tower. They're flying sorties of planes through Taiwan airspace to, what would you call it? Indoctrinate them, to get them used to them just doing it all the time. And one of those sorties at some stage will be the invasion. That's one of the theories that's out there. The big news on this one was it's one of the biggest ones, or the biggest ones. Yeah, the largest one yet to actually go into Taiwan's air defense zone. On the north of this, we've got South Korea has just fired warning shots after North Korean drones enter its airspace. So that's I would say a little bit more serious. They're actually firing back at them. So yeah, it looks like North Korea sent some drones over into South Korea's airspace, and South Korea said and fired some warning shots. Again, some strong words about this. It's provocation. It's increasing intention. This is always, and I continue talking about these things, not in the perspective of going like, it's about to go boom. It could quite well go boom at any stage in any of these theaters right now. But I'm just pointing it out because it does trend towards war more than trending towards peace. And that's the way things have been going. And it's worthwhile keeping your eye on this sort of stuff here. So just to give you some more information here, China sent 39 warplanes and 3 ships towards Taiwan in the past 24 hours. Like I said, this could be part of the, I guess, almost inoculation. So they continue doing it until the defenses go, okay, this is just China flying another sortie, doing their usual bluster. And when that happens, bang, that's when China's going to hit. If you've read Sun Tzu's Art of War, this would be exactly how you would play this. You would continue to do it and just say, hey, we're just flying here. This is also China testing the waters, but swinging their proverbial military dick around and kind of flaggering it in the face of the US, roughly. So US right now is, get away. China's been increasingly doing this, becoming more and more bold with the moves that they do, and flying sorties and larger sorties into Taiwanese airspace is them saying, hey, we are not afraid of you anymore, US. And that has a much bigger implication than just China going like, we can fly planes around. You can look at that kind of story and just go, who cares? China flew some planes and sent some ships flying around or sailing around Taiwan. What's that got to do with the price of fish, right? This is actually something bigger. It is belying something much larger. It is a symptom of a disease that's happening in the world. And that disease is the degradation of US power. And US military power, and especially US naval military power, has been, like many people have argued this, and I am in agreement with it, has been one of the things that has brought about the abundance that we see in our world at the moment. You can feel free to argue that if you want, and I'm more than willing to hear counterpoints to that. But it is my belief that part of or a big part, I would say the majority of the reason of how we got to the stage where we're at the moment in the world, where we had an interconnected global society and we had a trade system that can fail in such an epic way that it's about to, I believe, is through the US. It's the US securing a lot of things through their military power, or their exertion of military power, not necessarily using it, but just having the presence that they have. But this here is showing us that countries are no longer afraid of that power anymore. Countries like China, which is, yeah, not good. Couple of comments here. Alpha Omega Survival Supply says, I'm in the US and it is freezing here right now. Yes, and I'm going to get to some stories about that because there's some epic stuff going on in the US right now. And I think some really good lessons for us all to learn. Even I'm on the opposite side of the world and it's hot right now. Always good to think about what can happen. Desensitization or desensitized. Yes, that's the word I was looking for. That's what China is trying to do to Taiwan and by extension to the US as well. Peter Rouse says, not sure 100 rounds is considered warning shots. Exactly. It's, I don't know. There's some interesting things that are underneath there. When things happen in the military, people often look at it and there's this term military precision, which I find laughable. Having been in the military, having seen how the military system works, I find it laughable that we can think about precision and military in the same sort of brain space, in the same area, because quite often military is not precise at all. So this idea that somebody went, oh, okay, yep, I'm going to shoot off a couple of rounds and they missed and they're just warning shots. I look at that and I go, well, it's probably more likely that someone freaked out, shot, and just missed the mark totally. And then afterwards they've gone, those were just warning shots, by the way. Next time, I'll actually get you. But who knows? Who knows what's going on there? Take the Ride says you got some water pipes busted from the cold being in the Western Carolinas there of the US. Yeah, here we go. Alpha Omega says South Korea defenses couldn't take down the drones and one of their jets crashed. Huh. So that was just mere speculation from me, and maybe it's actually closer to the truth than I would have guessed. But it fits the model of military in my mind. Again, there was one of the plane that was shot down in Iran by their military, or Iran, earlier. Was it earlier this year or was it last year? Time is just meaningless to me at the moment. I'm not getting enough sleep, if you know what I mean. It's like new addition to the family, keeping me up at night. When that news broke and they said, oh, look, they targeted a plane, a commercial plane with innocent civilians on it, the first thing I thought was somebody stuffed up. I bet you there was somebody that stuffed up. There was a dude who shouldn't have been on the tools on that particular day, wasn't fully qualified on it, saw something, went, are we getting invaded? Is this happening? Do I hit it? Do I not? I don't want to make the wrong decision. I'll hit the button. And it was the wrong decision. So, yeah, that's what I'm talking about with military sort of stuff. And I've experienced it way too much personally, not like actually being involved in it, to know that that's not true. That is not true. All right, Alpha. I will call you Alpha from now on. That is much easier. Take the Right says U.S. military personnel can't figure out what pronoun they want to be called. That was one of the stories I was talking about in the last SitRep, that the Marine Corps is looking at dropping pronouns now within their training establishments, which is, I don't really care what you want to do. I just think you're focusing on the wrong thing. If a military fighting force is focusing on things like pronouns and what to be calling people, what they should really be focusing on is a war. Because as I keep highlighting here, these data points, it's not just what's happening in Ukraine. It's not just what's happening in China and Taiwan. It's not just what's happening in South Korea, North Korea. It's not just what's happening in Japan within those spaces, but also with Russia and Japan. Not just India and China, not just Iran and Israel, not just Greece and Turkey. You get the point here. There are many, many, many different conflicts that at any stage could kick off. And all of them that I just named would probably pull US in some way, shape, or form. That's what they should be really focusing on right now. All right, let's continue on here. So that's some of the geopolitical stuff that's happening in the world at the moment in that theater, in the Eastern Asian sort of theater as a whole. That popped up overnight, and I thought this is pretty, dire sort of stuff. Again, I don't like to get on here and speak the doom and gloom sort of stuff, but I'm not going to hide anything from you if I see it and I go, oh, that's interesting, but I don't want to talk about it because people who are watching me might get scared. I trust that you're not going to get scared, because the only fear that we should be allowing into our lives from this sort of stuff is the fear that motivates us to prepare more. Not the fear that kind of cripples us and goes like, the world is collapsing, the sky is falling, blah, blah, blah. Just this sort of stuff where we look at it and go, yep, all right, I'm seeing which way the wind is blowing here. We are moving into a more violent world. We are moving into a higher likelihood of war, of many wars, of even, dare I say it, world war happening. So I should prepare myself for the consequences of that happening, being I should look after me, my family, my circle, my community, as much as possible. Hey, Commie Hunter, thanks for joining me. Welcome. All right, so food stuff here. This one was sent to me from a main source on through Instagram. Really interesting stuff coming out of Bloomberg.com, so mainstream media, financial reporting mainly. And I've said this before, I do like to look at financial news because money is one of the biggest motivators in our world. And what the people who make lots and lots of money do matters. Matters for a few reasons, because it's going to have consequences to all us lower folk who, maybe if you're in a position like myself, I'm not the richest man in the world. So when the whale splashes, it pushes the water around and I get knocked around. But it also tells us what's going on, because these people, they're not just throwing darts at a board. They're not throwing shit at a wall and seeing what sticks. They are doing some serious analysis a lot of the time. They don't always get it right. And sometimes they are blinded by their own greed in where they're heading. But it is still worthwhile, I believe, looking at what financial journals, what financial bigwigs, what financial companies are doing, because they are quite often looking at a huge amount of different elements within a society and trying to predict how they can make money off that. So then when we see where they're putting money or where they're taking money away from, then we can see what they think is going to happen, which is interesting. So this, as I said, this one from Bloomberg, they're doing a bit of an analysis on German pig herds. Germany loves pig products. They love their pork. They've got the biggest pig herd or swine herd in Europe. I don't really have that in front of me, but I'm pretty sure they've got maybe second biggest or biggest swine herd within Europe. So pigs are a big thing to them. We're looking at the pig herd. What are the numbers here? It shrunk. It shrunk by a fifth. So that's 20% in just 2 years. So we're seeing their pig herd disappear. Now, why is that happening? Would be the next thing that we want to know. And this is the interesting part of this article. Not just that this is happening, that we want to know why this has actually happened. The drop was driven by surging feed, fertilizer, and energy bills, according to the report. No surprises there, right? If you guessed that before I said it, I'm not giving you a prize today, because we should know that by now. Fertilizer going up in price. It's going to become harder to get. It's going to increase in price. There is going to be a point where nations cannot get fertilizer to feed themselves. We have set our entire food system up like very much off the back of fertilizers. And if you don't believe me that you can pull out fertilizer and have a country feed itself, if you think that that's possible, then I would ask you to go and look at the example of what has happened in Sri Lanka in the past 2 years, because they did exactly that. They put a ban on fertilizers. They said everyone's going organic. And I love the idea. I love the theory. I love many theories, but I love reality more. And theories quite often get tested in this testing proving ground I call reality, and they don't always stack up. And that's exactly what happened in Sri Lanka. They have a huge, huge shortfall in the amount of food that they can produce now for the amount of human beings that they have. Because the amount of human beings that we have is based on how much food we can actually create. If we can create more food, we have more humans. in order to create more food, we've been using artificial fertilizers for a very long time now, for decades. Without that, if you pull that out of the system, the food dries up. The people starve. And I've talked about this many, many times, that this isn't something that's inconvenient. This isn't something that's painful. This isn't something that you can just wait out for 12 months and it'll come back online. Like, oh, there's a shortage in chips for iPhone 14s. We're all going to have to wait 12 months to get our iPhone 14. It's not like that. People can't wait for 12 months for food because you're going to die. You're going to starve and you're going to die. So that's why food's so important. That's why you need to be tracking this sort of stuff. But everything is, all these things, these individual data points that we're throwing up where we're going, hey, increasing energy prices, or shortage of fertilizers, or what's happened to that? Now fertilizer's gone up in price. We can't access it. We can't buy it. It costs too much. Getting feed for your animals, that costs too much as well. All of it factors in to that end product, to consumers like us. And I always say this, it's like, who's going to foot the bill for all of this? The government? Well, the government doesn't have money. The government is funded by us. So we foot the bill. Will it be the companies? No. They're going to pass on any increase in price to, once again, us, the consumer. It's always us. It's the lowest common denominator that gets hit over and over again. So beware of this. This is the sort of thing where I'm like, here's a big chunk of fear for you. But you can take that and you can go, right, I see what's happening. Food will increase in price. Food will increase in price in 2023. All right. As much as I can guarantee anything, I'll guarantee that. Grow your own food. Learn to grow your own food. If you have the ability, get your own animals. If you have the ability, learn how to hunt. If you have the ability and you've got the things, the food, learn how to trade with people for other things. And that's what I'm setting up. That's what I've been setting up for a number of years now, and pushing a little bit more into that and creating a little network around me in my local area. And that's what I really, really recommend that other people do as well. Commie Hunter says, depending on government scraps, that's what they want. As in the government, you can actually, like, I agree with you for starters. You can look at this from two different ways, and I look at it from one way and other people look at it from another way. You can look at it from kind of the conspiracy theory way and say the government is nefarious and they are trying to get all humans linked into their system so there's total control. Or the way I actually look at this from is it's just it's a system, and systems have a life of their own. And this system benefits when more people give to it. And if more people give to it, it gives more to people, which becomes this dependency loop. Government systems, the way we have them in the Western world at the moment, I believe, are akin to a codependent relationship. And a codependent relationship will spiral into further and further codependence the longer it's allowed to go on, unless somebody puts their hand up and says, stop, stop, stop. I need to become dependent. I need to break away from this. And that's essentially one of the subtexts of this channel here, is trying to encourage people to break away from that system as much as possible. We don't want to rely on the government. If you utilize the government, fine, utilize it. Utilize it for whatever you can. Don't depend on it. Do not give over agency of your own survival. That's one of the key points I always teach in my courses. Never hand over agency. Always retain agency for your own survival for as long as possible. Relying on somebody else to secure your physical safety, to secure your food, to secure your water is a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for slavery, and that's what you'll become. What else we got? Spice Gal says, did WEF, UN, WHO, IMF tell Sri Lanka to pull the fertilizer, and was Sri Lanka incentivized for it? I'm not sure. It did have something to do with, not IMF. It had something to do with WEF, I'm pretty sure, but I'd have to look into that. Kieran says, we're 100% capable of doing this ourselves. We've been led to believe we need to be reliant on friggin' Woolies and Coles. Exactly. And we don't. We definitely do not. I always say, like, take whatever you want from modern society. I'm not teaching people to be Amish and reject everything, but it's worthwhile knowing how to do the things. So I will go down to my local independent grocer in town here, and I will, or my butcher more likely, because he's my uncle-in-law, but and I'll go get some mince. All right, bang, got mince. I also will go hunting with my friend, and we will butcher and process the animal, and we will make mince out of it. I'll do both. And it just depends on where I am at that week and how much time I've got available to me and how I feel like I want to do this today, because there's benefit in both systems. And I want to say that there is benefit in both systems. And if I go totally like I'm going my own way and I'm doing my own thing, it doesn't actually encourage others to do what I'm doing so much. It creates more of a competitive situation. Whereas if I'm using my hard-earned dollaroos to pay the butcher for meat, to pay my friend who grows some veggies for some of their veggies, to pay this person who has raised pigs and butchers pigs for some of their product, all that sort of stuff, it encourages them to continue doing that, and it creates a system and it creates resiliency within the system as well. So do both. A lot of comments here on YouTube that I've missed. Polyface Farms USA have organic farming that produces more than commercial farms. Joel Citrini, I think his name is. Yeah, oh, there it is. Joel Salatin's. Joel Salatin's farming methods are definitely worth checking out. So if you haven't heard of Joel Salatin before, go check out his stuff. Great YouTube videos. A lot of stuff he's actually put out there that you should look into what he does. I first came across Joel Salatin. Actually, he did an interview on a podcast, which I started listening to, I want to say 12, 13, 14 years ago, called The Survival Podcast with Jack Spirko. And it's kind of the thing that got me into prepping, that podcast. But definitely Joel Salatin, worth checking out. Seeds for food can be purchased with food stamps in the United States, says Take the Ride. I did not realize that. I don't think we have any food stamp systems within Australia yet. Stock up on coal for winter fires to keep warm, says Peter Rouse. Bit late for Europe and America, but Southern Hemisphere next year. Peter Rouse says Joel Salatin was also on the documentary Food Incorporated. So check those ones out. All right. So that was pigs in Germany. German pigs. Das Schwein. All right. Also sent to me from my main source on Insta. We've been talking a lot about Moldova lately. Russia threatens Moldova. Ukraine offers to push Russia out. Russia claims that Moldovan cooperation with NATO undermines the security of Moldova itself, according to a statement made by Mikhail Gulizin, deputy head of Ministry of Foreign Affairs for the Russian Federation, in an interview with Russian propaganda agency RIA Novosti on December 24th. So we are still turning there within Moldova. We're seeing the propaganda war being fought at a high level right now within that country. What will happen next? I think, this is classic soft warfare that's happening right now, and softening techniques from Russia. If they were to move in, zero surprise to me at this point. If they were to push into Moldova, zero surprise. But I'm not in the Russian headshed at all, so I have no idea what they're going to do in that space there. But it's worth keeping your eye on that as well. All right, let's talk about the US at the moment. Obviously got a lot of cold stuff happening in the US. I know there's a couple of you here on YouTube right now who are in the US, namely Alpha and Take the Ride. The reports we're getting here are you're being absolutely battered with cold weather. As I said before, the main thing that I got onto this wasn't actually through the news. I mean, there was stuff in the news about it, but I follow NFL, And I was looking at the weather for the games that were coming up that I was watching. I'm like, man, it looks cold there. What's going on? Is it snowing in Miami right now? Did that seriously happen? Can anyone confirm that it snowed in Miami? It was like, apparently it was 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which I don't have my calculator on me, but that's pretty cold in Celsius. So being absolutely battered, being described as a blizzard bomb by some weather sites. And then on top of that, electricity problems as well. Here we go. Peter Rouse says 32 equals 0. It's not linear though, but 32. So if there were 40 in Miami, it's pretty close to 0 degrees Celsius. Come on, US, why can't you just come to the Celsius with us? I'm always having to do these crazy calculations when you're talking about weather. It's 72 degrees outside. I'm like, what does that even mean? All right, so yeah, I'll talk about this. Huge weather effects, mass amounts of snow that are being dumped on certain areas. There's been huge car pileups. There's been people stuck in cars for, one report said days, said overnight and the next day. So a report here that I'm looking at, there's 50 feared dead in this winter bomb cyclone. Bodies found frozen in cars. I saw reports of bodies being dug out of snowdrifts next to roads, of people who just got caught out. Pretty devastating stuff. And different areas having the power grid knocked out because of the cold or the wind or the storm, whatever's doing it. Peter Rouse says they tried it in the 80s but completely failed to convert to the metric system in the US. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Well, you guys just stay. Don't go change in US. You're doing great. It's just, you know what really bugs me though? I can't figure out inches, feet, yards. Like, how do they fit together? It just seems real random to me. Alpha says it was minus 37 degrees wind chill here, which is minus 35. That's 37 degrees Celsius. Minus 35 degrees Celsius, where Alpha is. Usually doesn't get that cold here. I'm not sure if you mentioned what part of the States you're from, but it's definitely cold in the States, right? And again, these sort of weather effects, I love talking about more weather effects. There's usually one weather effect or incident that I talk about every SitRep, and I like to throw them in because I think it is such an important thing. It is the most likely emergency that any human being would be caught in a developed country, as far as I'm concerned. You can disagree with me with that. I mean, maybe if you're talking about loss of job or car crash or something like that might be more likely. But a weather event, an extreme weather event, is a highly likely event that you'll be caught in within a time period of 2 to 3 years. So extreme cold, extreme heat, fire, storm, tornado, cyclone. Don't get caught in cycling. Tsunami, you name it. These things are going to happen. Worth thinking about. People caught in their cars. So you're driving in snow on a freeway, and all of a sudden all you can see is red lights in front of you. A truck has tipped over. Emergency services cannot get out there because it's not safe enough for them to do so. And OH&S rules that they're living under at the moment say, no, you can't risk your life. Don't do it. So everything comes to a standstill. You now are stuck on a freeway in your car for overnight and the next day. Do you have in your vehicle right now enough for you to survive in minus 37 degrees Celsius? I sure as hell do not. I will admit that 100%. The likelihood of it getting minus 35 degrees Celsius right now in Australia is pretty low. I do have other things, though, that I carry in my car in different seasons. The biggest threat here right now is bushfire. At this point, we've got a lot of rain lately, but I still think bushfire is still up there. It's always going to be up there where I live. So things like fire blankets or woolen blankets, water, spare clothing, so good rugged clothing that I can actually fight a fire in, fire extinguishers, all these sorts of things, first aid kits and stuff like that. I've got my vehicle. So that's something that I think is worth thinking about. When I saw this, apart from the tragic sense of it that people have lost their lives, I think the tragedy for me is exacerbated that people have lost their lives, and I would say unnecessarily. Like a little bit of preparedness here could have saved all these lives. So just thinking about that, dress appropriately too. Have extra warm gear in your car. Have food. Have a way to heat your car. Have a way to lock down your car. That's another thing, is having barriers in your car, or the wind, the sunscreen things in your car. So yeah. Not good stuff, but also electricity being knocked out for many, many people in certain areas. On top of that, in Washington, 3 power substations have been attacked. This was on Christmas Day, so this left about 14,000 people without power. So what is actually happening there? Law enforcement agencies are now investigating at least 8 attacks on power stations in 4 states in the past month that have underscored the vulnerability of the nation's power grid. It remains unknown if they were connected. So what is actually happening there in the US? Because I've reported on a couple of these so far, and this latest one on Christmas Day in Tacoma, Washington, not, where's the other Tacoma? Arizona? New Mexico, Tacoma. I don't know, there's probably a Tacoma in every state, but is there a car called Tacoma? No, someone can answer that. The Untamed Spirit on Instagram says, yep, talks of mini ice age. Kieran says it's sus. It's pretty clear to see. Commie Hunter says, I'm going to go start growing my own stuff and start preparing. Good. Spice Gal says, I agree, but how about for many who live in apartments with no access to soil to grow food? And this is a big one. I would really highly recommend going and watching a channel on YouTube called City Prepping. Chris on City Prepping has done a really, really fantastic job of answering a lot of questions that I hadn't really thought about. And this is one of the reasons why I love his channel, because when I'm prepping in a rural location, and I'm prepping on property, and I've got access to land and things like that. He's prepping in a city, in suburbs, in California. So there's a whole heap of restrictions that he has to prepare under. And so he goes through how he does that, and quite often talks about these sorts of things and what happens if I would argue, the worst case scenario, living in an apartment. Personally, I would say to people, if you are living in an apartment right now, at this point in time in history, I would be doing everything I can to get out of that apartment, to live somewhere else, even if you've just got a little bit of land, even just a little front yard or something. I would be doing that. But if you are stuck in an apartment, you have to live in an apartment, do you have a balcony? A lot of apartments do, not most apartments, but a lot of apartments have balconies. So you can grow food. I have done this in the past. I did live in a city for many, many years, and I have grown food in a city, in an apartment. So it is doable. There's also things like community gardens that you can access, but you can also start to think about, okay, is there someone else that I know? Is there a family member that has a backyard? Can I approach them and say, hey, can I use this section of your backyard and grow veggies and for us? I'll come around once a week or twice a week, and I'll tend to the veggies. You can go further afield, and you can say, okay, well, do I have a bug out location? Get real prepper. Hang on, put my tinfoil hat on. Got your bug out location, which might be, half an hour away, whatever it is, somewhere you're going to go. Can you start prepping that? You don't necessarily need to be like growing the food, but can you start tending the soil, making it ready that if you do go out there, you can start growing food. And then, of course, storing your own seeds and storing your own food. That's all doable within an apartment. So these are all things, you do need to think outside of the box. It's not just as easy. I know I get on here every time and I say, hey, get out there in the garden and start growing. I get it. It's not as easy to do that for some people, but do what you can. Do what you can. Even if you grow herbs on your kitchen sink, that is better than nothing. All right, because it's not just the amount of food that you grow. It's not about growing food to sustain you. Oh yeah, I grow all my food. I grow 100% of my food. I'm like, I don't know who does that. No one I know does that. You might grow 5% of your food. You might grow 0.5% of your food. It might just be herbs that you have that you sprinkle on some of your food every now and then. That might be the only thing you grow. The important thing is that you grow. Every time you grow a plant, every time you tend to a plant, every time you water a plant, you are learning something. You are learning a valuable skill, a life-saving skill. So I could not recommend enough that you just find whatever way you can and try and do something. All right, quickly catch up on some comments here. I'm going to just skip over the concealed weapons carry because it upsets me that I'm not allowed to here in Australia. Take the Ride says, it amazes me that people will buy cigarettes, lots of shoes, purses, extravagant TVs and appliances they don't need, and they don't care to get outside of the city limits. That's right. A lot of people won't. A lot of people actually refuse to do it. A lot of people at this point in time are actually really trying to reinforce their view of reality. They're trying to distract themselves and reinforce their view of reality, which is safe and advanced and warm and, within the space of confines of a city. Because it's scary. I get it. It is scary to step outside of that, or it can be scary to step outside of that, but it's really something we need to start encouraging people to do as much as possible. I keep telling people eating grass in your yard is not nutritional. It says take the ride. What is nutritional? There's this amazing little thing that you can get that you can actually convert grass into an edible form now. It's amazing. It's called a cow or a sheep. Or even you can get a pig or a chicken and convert just about anything into an edible product. So these are things we can do with grass. Grass does have a purpose. It's what my food eats. Use bird insect netting over outdoor gardens to increase production. That's always a good one. Where I live as well, and possibly where you live as well, Peter, frost netting is a big one. That helps extend my growing season out significantly. Like I would say maybe 2 months extra growing season that I can get if I've got really good frost netting set up. I know a lot of people that grow 80 to 95% of their food each year themselves. They are fully off grid, says Take the Ride. That is awesome. I love to hear this. Again, this is something that we really need to start doing ourselves, and we really need to start encouraging other people to do so as well. Peter Rouse says frosts here also, but also millions of birds. Yep. We lose a fair bit to birds around here, but I don't know. There's ways to keep them off. It's called scattershot. No, it's called an air rifle. Scarecrow or dogs that don't like birds. That's always a good one. Great lively discussion today, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. That's all the stories I've got. Just wrapping up with that. What do we got here? Yeah, the US storm sort of stuff and the US electricity grid. One thing, I did read a book a little while ago. Oh God, I can't remember what it's called. It's called The Green New Deal. That's what it was called. It's an interesting book. It is about it's all about like, hey, we just need to go green. We need to, change everything and just on our head flip everything. I don't believe what the book says is feasible in the way that we live right now. We'd have to change everything about how we live, and we probably have to have fewer humans around for it to work. It's very inspirational though, in its green ideals. But it does have some cool stuff in there. And one of the cool things I thought that was in there in that book, I can't remember the author, sorry. But one of the cool things that the author points out is how old our energy grid systems are right now, and how they're almost guaranteed to fail at this point. Like, we should have updated them years and years ago, but now it's got to this point where it's like, well, we can't update them because it's too expensive and they're going to fail and we can't really fix them. So we're kind of looking at a grid collapse, electricity grid collapse, at which point we're going to have to do something anyway. But it is interesting that, we're seeing these attacks in the US and they are working and they are taking out power for people. This should be a huge warning to everyone. Just like looking at this sort of stuff, I look at it and I go, well, I feel much better about the, $1,500 or whatever it was I saved up and went and bought some lithium batteries and a new inverter and some new cording and rebuilt a solar system that I had. I feel much better when I saved up that money and went and bought a little power generator. I feel much more at ease. I used the fear of no electricity to drive me to do something. So that is kind of like the crux of what I've been talking about today, is using that fear to actually drive us to actually do something, to change something about our lives, to reinforce something that might be a hole, so that we're not walking around with fear. It's not very good for a human being to be in a fearful state for a long period of time. That's what most human beings right now are walking around. They've just had 3 years of having fear rammed down their throats. And so they're acting in a very, well, you could say irrational way, but I would say they are acting in a way that is consistent of somebody who is living with a high level of cortisol in their system, who is living with a high level of fear in their mind at all times. That's what prepping is about to me. It's about the alleviation of fear. It's about converting fear into confidence. I don't walk around the world wringing my hands going, woe is me, everything's about to go shit. I walk around the world going, things could go bad, things could go great. It doesn't really matter. I feel like I have prepared at least a base level for me and my family so that we're going to be okay. There's always something. There's always something that could happen that's beyond that. It could be meteors falling from the sky and we're all wiped out and it doesn't matter. But for the things that I can foresee, that I see are potential, for some things that I even see as probable, I feel that I have prepared at least a base level. And that's what this is all about. That's the entire crux of this channel. All right, gang, thank you again very much for joining me. I really, really appreciate each and every one of you. I appreciate all the comments you put up. I appreciate the likes and the follows. I do see them. I don't always write back to everything. I've got other stuff going on in my life and I try not to live online. But I do see them and I do appreciate them. I hope you're all staying safe out there. If you are one of those people up in the American area, the North American area, I really do hope you're staying safe and warm right now as best as you can. And if you're in Australia or New Zealand, staying cool because it's quite warm here. As always, if you've got any questions, please fire them through to me. If you come across anything that you find interesting, send it through to me because chances are I'll probably find it interesting as well. But until next time, gang, keep your eyes open out there. Keep looking. There's stuff happening. We, the prepared people, will see it before everyone else does. And we will be able to help ourselves and we will be able to help them as well, hopefully. Keep prepping. Get your hands in the garden if you can. Just keep storing that food up. And until next time, Semper Paratus.